All right, folks, thank you for attending today's ILSA product briefing. My name is John Zaradnik, and today's session is Reduce Risk and Enforce Retention with FileTrail's Enterprise Retention. Again, my name is John Zaradnik. I'm from InOutsource. We are FileTrail's go-to-market partner. Many of you know us for our years of consulting experience, maybe from past engagements or pending ones. Excuse me. Today I have on the line with me, as mentioned, my name is John Zaradnik. I handle our business development for FileTrail, but I also have Jonathan King, who manages this sort of market for FileTrail, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. A little bit of background here on InOutsource. As I mentioned, many of you do know us. For those of you who don't, a quick little introduction. At our core, we are really business process consultants for law firms. We work exclusively with law firms, particularly the AmLaw 100, 200 space, sort of our sort of area of operation. We started, doing information governance and records management consulting, and that expanded into new business intake and conflicts consulting. And using those years of experience as pure process consultants, we've started to, over the last, I would say, 5 years, started to partner with a few technology solutions to be able to bring more holistic and better leveraged solutions to law firms. So we did that a few years ago with Intap. That's grown to be a really great relationship. We've shown ourselves to be one of the strongest implementation partners that Intap has for the legal space. And that's due to the years of strict process consulting that we did. We really worked through firms to really examine their processes, figure out, streamline what was redundant, making sure we're capturing the information and automating what we can without, excluding the human interaction in the piece. So really leveraging solutions to make sure that firms are really approaching things from a holistic perspective. And doing the same with information governance, of course. We've worked with firms for years on records processes, workflows, and retention policies. So we've really understood the challenges facing law firms today. So that's really brought us to what we're talking about today is FileTrail. Over the years, as I mentioned, we've worked with law firms on a number of different areas for records in terms of process and policy. And we heard, throughout the years that while folks love the legal keys and the ARM, because they provided really, a structured approach at times, allowed us to categorize things and what we've really come to learn. But over the years, really hearing some frustrations with a lot of those systems, especially when it came to IT involvement. There's so many growing technology as it is in law firms today. IT departments are getting stretched thinner and thinner, and we didn't want, to partner with a solution that was going to add to that burden. And I've just realized that I am not showing you folks my screen. Apologize for that. So some of our requirements that we started hearing from law firms were, again, that minimal IT support. We wanted something that didn't necessarily require installs for clients. We wanted something that was a little bit more robust in terms of configurability and didn't allow for too much of the IT, assets to be able to configure these systems. On the record side, we heard a lot about retention and disposition workflows. There really aren't any in any of the products that are out in legal today. Legal Key and ARM are great solutions in that they've survived for this long, even though they haven't been actively developed in years. But they're not meeting the functionality that law firms needed in terms of managing retention and disposition. Right now, folks are combining spreadsheets and notes fields and memo fields and trying to manage these processes through email and face-to-face interactions and not really capturing any of that in the system. So we wanted something where we could capture all that great information and use that as a policy engine for our information governance programs. Reporting and searching are two areas that we hear a lot of sort of frustrations and struggles, particularly if it comes to Legal Key. I think many people are on the phone are probably familiar with paying Legal Key exorbitant amount of money for customized reporting. So we wanted something that really allowed us to search the entire database, and FileTrail does allow us to do that. Related to all these sort of capturing information in the system are audit trails. We wanted to be able to have a system that really captured how a file changed and what happened to a file over the course of its life cycle. So not just good enough to say that a file was modified on a date, but what field was modified and what information was changed. We wanted something to better leverage space management as well. To the extent, we're a lot of times using customized location systems today to mimic shelving capacity. So we wanted to be able to, in some cases, indicate shelving for those high-density shelving units or firms that are maybe managing large spaces on site. So we wanted something to be able to track that and help manage that so that we could get that space down over time. So looking into the future for that as well. So that really led us to FileTrail. And with that, I'm going to pass over the screen and slides to John King so that he can walk us through some of the slides that he has today. John, take it away.
Okay, thanks, John. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for your time. So I'm going to try to run through these slides pretty quickly. So for those that are already familiar with us, we were founded in 2000. Our primary focus has been on information governance and records management, since the beginning. At that time, the large law firm market was primarily using LegalKey and FileSurf, AccuTrack, and a couple others. So we went to market focusing on corporate legal. We primarily won business in pharma, financial services, insurance, energy industries, mostly because of the usability and flexibility of the system, but also because of the granularity and really the specificity of the audit trails and tracking capabilities that we have that are really unmatched in the record space. So this diversity in our client base has provided tools that we're continually seeing. It's lowering the risk in law firms that we're working with by trying to avoid by following their retention policies and audit reporting tools. So this is such a huge benefit that may not have otherwise been developed on a tool that was focused only on legal. If you've been on previous webinars, you know that we've talked about this replacement cycle in the market, and we've been doing a number of ARM, LegalKey, and other legacy system replacements over the last couple of years. So these are just a few of the names that we work with today, but our implementation teams are really slammed, and this list is growing faster every quarter. So we have a few press releases that are coming out leading up to ILTA, and the law firm market has really become our primary focus, not only in sales, but also in our development. And so we're focused on building tools specifically for improving and adding value for this market. So we've really narrowed our vision to focus specifically on building a framework for information governance for the global law firm. The design of our solution delivers high value by creating tools to empower the IG staff and lower the amount of IT support required. So part of this framework includes having an open architecture, so we can integrate with the tools within the law firm ecosystem. Okay, so we integrate with tools like Open for new business intake, which John is going to discuss today, ethical walls to ensure compliance with outside counsel and regulatory guidelines. We work with DM systems to provide ease of use and access to physical records from within their space. So with Net Documents and iManage and OpenText, providing that single pane of glass for end users to see both their electronic and physical records together. And also providing an information governance framework. So that means that we're taking the policies and apply them to information in every repository, including those DM systems, shared drives, SharePoint, litigation repositories, and more. So our system is truly agnostic and open to work with anyone so that you're not locked into a single platform. And we've really found some great partners in this space who share that view of providing those best-in-class solutions. So our technology from the back-end administration to the end user interface is all 100% web browser base. There's no browser overlay on top of a legacy Windows application. It was built as a browser-based product from day one, from the ground up. In many of our implementations, IT has little to no involvement with the product because there really isn't a need to. The tools were designed to empower the right users to configure searches, ad hoc reports, metadata fields, labels, new offices, and even import data. So we have, global operations with thousands of users where IT spends maybe an hour or less every 6 months. So we're focused on reducing the complexity of managing firm retention policies versus the outside counsel guidelines. So this includes, automatically classifying physical and electronic records upon creation, disposition reviews at the matter level, and dashboards to enforce process and make that process easy. So this really helps decrease the time that attorneys are spending on operational tasks to free their time to increase revenue for the firm. So today we're going to focus on some of the tools for retention, but I do want to call out the deep functionality that's available to add efficiency basically at every point that a file is touched. So the system is configurable based on practice areas and client and matters. Clients are able to print labels, and we also have that cart concept for doing batch actions. And John, let's go to the next one. And so continuing with that, we're focused on decreasing costs in operations. And so, helping lower the total cost of ownership of the system by having saved searches and configurable searches and reporting, connecting with external repositories, being able to report on matters, and then also providing some tools around lateral moves. So that's a big area. There's a lot of activity there, so that's something that we'll touch on today as well.
All right, thanks, John. So where I'd like to start everybody today is with our InTap open integration. So I know that's a hot topic on everyone's mind. And for us, retention really starts at matter opening. We're getting outside counsel guidelines, generally speaking, hopefully, at new matter intake or at the beginning of a client engagement. So we really want to be able to make sure that we are leveraging all the tools that we have in this law firm ecosystem that John mentioned to the best of our abilities. As I mentioned, we're a partner here, so we really leveraged our expert knowledge with InTap and our knowledge of FileTrail to build an integration that will push some of that information governance information to the record system or to the records team, so that we can highlight the sort of the outside counsel guidelines, the special handling practices that we may need to enact throughout the matter lifecycle. And I also apologize, my internet is running a little slow today. Just give it a second. Here we go, sorry about that. So what I have up in front of us is just a couple generic questions. Many of you are saying, hey, I wish our new matter intake forms were this short. That would make life a lot easier. I know that folks are sort of creating much more robust forms here, but these are just a sampling some questions that we find that are sort of impact the records handling process. So for the client, I'm gonna in this scenario, we're working with existing clients. And so I'm going to put a matter in here And that's an information to this disclaimer matter. So right here, what we've done is we've just added a simple memo field. Are there any special practices that the records or information governance department need to be aware of? Maybe that we get from outside counsel guidelines that we need to restrict access to matter team here. So that's just a kind of a note or a comment that we want to make. Certainly want to be able to pass the guidelines themselves over, but we want to maybe pass any notes so that there's any reference to referenceable information in the record system. Is this a matter where we may, we potentially contain PHI or anything that's going to be in this matter subject to HIPAA? Not something that I'm foreseeing with this particular matter, so I'm going to hit no. But if I hit yes, if this was a matter that may contain PHI, putting a note up here, physical files need to be secured in this file room per our sort of HIPAA or PHI standards. Maybe we want to fire off an email to the records team at this time and say, hey, excuse me, hey, records team, wouldn't it be nice if we could kick off that email and say, these files are coming in, new matter may contain PHI, they need to be restricted to this room. So I know that some matters, some outside counsel guidelines we've seen over the years require firms to sort of staple a brightly colored 4x4 label right on the red weld. So maybe we're kicking off an email or building into the workflow actual acknowledgement that I've created, on the records team, that I've created these files and I've secured or affixed this card to restrict access to this matter team. So, or to flag this as PHI. Regulations, ITAR regulations or EAR regulations, if we need to flag that in the system, we're able to do that or not as well. Quick section here as well for retention guidelines. If we've got, our standard is 7 years after matter close and we want to add a note, we can do that as well. We can even send off an email at this point to the records team to trigger part of a workflow where we request that set of outside counsel guidelines from the attorney or from the client intake group so that we can make sure that our records are properly classified and retention guidelines are set within FileTrail so that we're made aware of this at matter opening and not at matter close or, God forbid, 10 years later when we go back to look at it and we can say, oh, we were supposed to destroy these 5 years ago, or we're supposed to keep these for another 10 years and we should have boxed them a little bit differently. So having information like that, I think is a huge value add to the team. It allows us to search against fields and add information to the system directly that will allow us to have healthier, more robust and compliant programs. And because we're process consultants, we look for efficiencies everywhere, right? So if I know that I still need a physical file for this, even if it's just a convenience copy, I hope we're not creating official physical records for all our new matters. But we certainly want, maybe need to be creating convenience copies for attorneys who are accustomed to working with that. So I can actually automate file creation from this as well. Just a couple of the document types that we loaded into the sample environment. These would obviously be drawn from your FileTrail environment, so you get a full robust list of available file types, excuse me. So if I wanted to say, okay, I know that I'm going to need some drafts right away, titling this, indicating our file owner, adding any notes possibly, and then even adding subfolders to that as well. So if I know that I wanted to add this as well, and add this information here, and I can actually kick this off right into our FileTrail environment. So I'm going to proceed with that. There we go. So I'm going to give that just a minute to kick over, but we can actually pass those file creation requests right over to the new system and shouldn't take us too long whatsoever. You'll notice that I'm only loading the widget here just to monitor my creation requests. Instead of loading an entire page, I wanted to just load this. I wanted to be able to load this, a nice little feature that FileTrail comes with us. But I'm going to go right into this creation request here as a records user and show you what that looks like when that lands in the system. So you can see these files are landing in. I can quickly open them and review these files for any, just to double check as part of the records group. You can see this information is passed over. We can also see some of that information that we're passing over for the client or the matter is landing here in the records system as well. So those notes that I passed over, does the client have any guidelines, restrict access to the matter team. So now I can either, we've either triggered a process through walls where we've used your ethical wall solution to pass over that screen right into FileTrail and use a wall to do that. Or we've got the functionality within FileTrail to be able to go in and edit the security of the client or matter and restrict it to access and manage it directly within the system that way. Personally, I'm a fan of executing the walls through the sort of open connector into walls or whatever your ethical wall solution is at the time. But if you don't have that integrated or that's not something that your firm's managing from line, we can manage it right through the system, which is another really good benefit that we saw. Flagging this information for HIPAA, all that information is captured here and passed along to the records team with little or no extra effort than what we're already doing. So that's our quick overview of our InTap Open integration. I'm going to switch over to my more standard demo environment and talk about some of the other benefits of the information that we've passed over. So something is easy as what we passed over as just indicating that the client has non-standard guidelines. So just that little checkbox. Even before we talk about passing over the actual guidelines themselves, we want to be able to capture information like that. So what I've actually done in the system, and just sort of speaks to the flexibility of FileTrail as a whole, as I've configured a search that runs against the matter profile as well as the items beneath it as well. So one of those pieces of information that I passed over from InTap is this non-standard retention checkbox. It's just a 1 or a 0 that passes over. So if they say yes, something as simple as not being able to just check that and say there's non-standard guidelines here. So I have passed over at the matter level. So what I've actually done is I've run a quick search or created this quick search within FileTrail, and I'll get into the search functionality a little bit later. But I've pre-configured this search to run a search in the system of any matters that have that non-standard retention clicked as yes, and the files under it are mapped to our standard retention series. So I can look under this and run this check off the system. So before I even get into the great retention functionality and the tools that we have, I can run this search for these files in the system, and I can see that the guideline I passed over is here. I can see that these files have the standard retention series modified, and maybe we need to modify these, or excuse me, they're marked as standard here and now need to be modified or updated within the system. So really great access to being able to, or for the records team to be able to show them information right at new matter intake. So even if this just triggers the workflow of records knowing to ask, that's huge for us. That communication is lacking, I think, often. I was at a firm the other day and I asked them how they manage outside counsel guidelines, and the response was, I've got an Outlook folder that I get them sent, and usually I get the outside counsel guidelines at matter closing. So if something needs to be destroyed right away, she's only just being made aware of it when the matter closes, and wasn't often being made aware of ahead of time. So just triggering off these flags for the records group is huge. Certainly even bigger value add to be able to trigger workflows so that we can execute compliance and we can really report against compliance. So I use the example of maybe affixing a matter screen card or matter or a PHI flag to an envelope. Maybe we're including records to the point that they're actually having to respond to a request and indicate, yes, I affixed this card to the files that are created for this client matter on this date and time, of course. So we really saw a need there to increase that communication. Big value add for InOutsource here was that FileTrail was so willing to work with every other system. The question of creating an integration between Open and FileTrail was so obvious that it's, we of course knew we wanted to do it, but it's something that even one of our active clients, we hadn't quite talked about this integration with them yet. We were getting through their implementation, and we're a few weeks out of implementation now, and they said, okay, well, for us, phase 2 is getting this integrated to open, and we were like, we had instilled such a sense of them playing nicely in that sandbox that they knew how sort of obvious that next step was for them. So we're really excited about exploring all these different use cases with folks. So I've rambled on a little bit about how retention, really kicks off as a matter opening in terms of how we handle the file and best practices going forward for client security. But the real workload obviously comes at the end. FileTrail's got super robust functionality in that regard. FileTrail actively monitors your system for retention information. So you don't need to know, okay, it's the first of the month, I need to run a report and I need to find everything that's eligible for retention based on all these parameters that I've somehow memorized or miraculously pulled out and have in some sort of central data source, and where I'm managing that and reviewing. We're going to build your system, build your retention policy right into the system. So all of your record series are going to be captured as soon as they're created, and the system is going to monitor for it on a regular basis. So we are able to set the system up so that it can monitor, do a retention sort of review every month, every quarter, every 6 months, every year. So, the way we're seeing it pan out is folks are running it like a year at a time. So getting that retention cycle either 6 months or every year, so they can work through all those legacy files, but are already seeing how they're going to be able to back off those or sort of increase those rather to more yearly or monthly or quarterly reviews so that they can be more diligent and have a healthier program. So right on our desktop, we've got our disposition review monitor. This is a demo environment, so it's been up for quite a while. You can see this team is quite behind schedule, as I think you're all accustomed to, just in terms of getting through this workload. So we've got a few items that need to be reviewed, of course. I'm going to click right into this disposition review monitor, and it's going to take me to our disposition review area here in FileTrail. So in our ideal world and in the way we've configured this FileTrail environment, what's going to happen when we're firing retention off is either at matter close or last build date or another date field or another field that we're triggering off within FileTrail or the financial system is you're going to get an email going out to all the attorneys that are responsible for reviewing files. So if your firm is set up at practice group leaders or there's a risk team that review files, we can send an email out to those groups of folks, ask them, say, you've got X number of files up for review, please click here, and it's going to take them into here, and it's going to talk about or show them all the files that are eligible for review. And John, if I'm not mistaken, in the release that's coming out this week, we're going to be able to filter those results and specify those results to the attorney groups. Do you want to talk through that update a little bit?
Yeah, that's right. So with the upcoming release, basically the attorneys that are assigned to a matter will be able to go into their reviews and be assigned the matters that they're responsible reviewing right from the admin's dashboard. And then that's something, over time, these reviews are typically happening, years later. It could be 7, 10, or 20 years later. So it's quite possible that the attorney that originally was responsible for the matter is not there anymore. So that's something that, as that responsibility gets updated in the time and billing system, it will then be updated within FileTrail so that we capture the proper person responsible for reviewing those. And then that person that it gets escalated to, they again will only see the matters that they're responsible to review.
Awesome, thanks for that, John. Sorry, I'm just reloading my page here. There we go. So as John mentioned, these results are going to be filtered by the attorney, so they're certainly not going to see all 220 matters that are eligible for review. They'll see what's important to them and what they need to respond to. And the nice part is that there are multiple folks. You know, I brought up very quickly while John was talking the matter profile here. We've actually captured multiple different attorneys, so we can do this at the matter or the client level. And I really like this because we can capture client originating attorney, maybe then classify further a client responsible attorney. So as John mentioned, as those things are getting updated, we're updating them in our financial system so that we know who's responsible for these. When an attorney leaves the firm, we can kick off workflows to indicate from the record side, okay, this is the attorney that's leaving. Let me now update this. Who do these matters now are they responsible for? So as part of our workflow, we can build that up and capture that information here. So that's a nice feature and a nice way to include data from multiple systems as well. So again, what happens for these folks is they jump into the system, and the nice part about being web-based here is they click a link. They're not expected to go find it on their desktop or to find their bookmark. They click a link and it takes them to the system. They've got single sign-on, so it's just opening the browser up, bringing them right here. So they don't have to click anywhere. They can see, okay, they know I need to review these matters. And it's as simple a process as clicking off the matter, marking as reviewed. Now, in this environment, we've got 4 different levels of review. So we have some configuration options in terms of the classifications of reviews here. Maybe records needs to provide a business review just to make sure some things are going ahead, but a returnee is just providing like an overall review in terms of kicking off the workflow. But we certainly can limit this to maybe just one option as well. So they're going to click off that they've reviewed this item, mark OK, and then that job is done for them. That matter's out of their way. So, but if they want to take a look at the matter and say, I'm not really sure I wanted to get rid of all these things, so let me just take a look here, and they can expand the view and view the items in the matter that are eligible at this time. So they don't need to necessarily review all of the items that are in the matter. Maybe they just need to review the documents that are up for retention at this time. So client originals are a good example of that. Documents that probably should go back to the attorney, back to the client right at matter close, so we can get them out of our hair. But maybe we need to keep them for just a year after matter close, so that we can make sure that billing gets all wrapped up, and if there's any sort of just after the case, references we need to be making. So if that's the case, then we're just going to get this one item up here. But they say, okay, no, I want to review some of these things, and I want to keep this report. So I'm going to request these items. You can submit a request for them right here through this interface. Obviously, these items are requested already, so kind of a poor example here. But you can see they can select a couple of different types of requests if they want. If they only want to do delivery, and just have it, we can keep this pretty simple. But we've talked with a number of firms about some sort of unique workflows and processes that they want to kick off. So we can have some configuration options here as well in terms of different tasks that we can configure in the system. So we can do priorities here. We can include some notes and then even a date and time so that we can make requests of our offsite storage vendor at a reasonable way. We can also easily add these to a hold here. So if I wanted to add these expert reports to a hold, maybe I think this has some intrinsic value to the firm, and I just wanted to, I can add a records management hold, which I so eloquently called today's sample. I can apply that hold. We can also configure the options in terms of, I think one of the new things, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, that are coming out in the next release is more functionality to be able to limit the sort of time frames that attorneys are allowed to hold an item. So if you have folks that are maybe saying, oh yeah, hold this for another year because they don't want to review it right now, we can actually limit that maybe to 1 or 2 times so that we can allow folks to prioritize a little bit, but don't want to let it get away from us. So we've got some good configuration options here as well. Now, a little caveat about the screen that I'm in. I'm logged in as a records administrator right now, so I've got a bunch of different items that we certainly wouldn't be allowing attorneys to view. Anytime you're in the system and you've got buttons up here, that's always privilege-based. So everything that shows up in the system is based on the permissions you have. So as an attorney, I'm going to see mark reviewed, add to hold, and request, and that's going to be it. All these other buttons are not going to show up. So once they do that, once they check that box off, click mark as request and hit OK, marked as reviewed, and select OK, then they're done. That's all they need to do, and that information is now captured in the system as this person authorized the disposition of these files. They don't need to necessarily go through the whole workflow beyond that. From there, the records team will be able to process these files. So I can filter the results down here, and I want to see everything that's cleared for disposition. So what's going to happen from the records perspective is they're going to see all these files that are now cleared for disposition. And I'm a records administrator. I'm in charge of reviewing files. So I see all these are reviewed. I can even click on this link and look at this item and look at the audit report and see who in fact viewed it. So by opening the item and clicking the audit report, I can get a really detailed view into what's happened over the life cycle of the file. So this was another thing that I mentioned earlier being really important to InOutsource. So all of these, what happened at creation. Here were all the fields and what the data was entered in at that time, even showing you what was left blank, what information maybe needed to be filled in and was left empty. You can see that it was changed and what happened, where it was changed to, what the old information was, and you can see the different reviews that have been processed on this item as well. So really good granularity, really good transparency. So you can see, okay, this was here. So when someone asks, okay, I need a report of all this information of my files, we're able to print out these reports and show them, okay, yeah, this was reviewed on this date and time by this person. So once we've verified that review, the records team can now submit these requests for processing right into the system. So if I know that this item needs to be returned to the client, I can, as a records manager, maybe just submit these requests so that all of those client guidelines are followed, and I can select which items, maybe say return to client, and trigger that workflow so that those boots on the ground workers who are doing this can now include this action as part of their workflow. So what we see a lot of times in records groups is that retention becomes like a whole separate project that's almost removed from the rest of the day in, day out processes. So this is a great way to incorporate these activities into our regular day in, day out of ordering boxes and whatnot, so that we can increase our efficiencies and not sort of take time out of our day to work on a separate thing that really should be part of our healthy overall process as it stands today. So that's the functionality that exists in FileTrail right now for managing retention. If we have a little bit of time at the end, I'll try to open the configuration tools and show you how some of this information is captured and classified in the system. But what I'd like to do at this time is pass over controls to John King and let John King take us through some of the functionality for managing enterprise retention that's coming out in the next couple releases.
All right, thanks, John. So during the implementations that are happening today, a lot of firms are using this transition as an opportunity to improve and modernize processes. So part of this is the concept of the record as it relates to a matter. So many firms historically operated with electronic documents in one place and physical records in another. And today we're seeing a lot more firms moving towards the thinking that, everything, whether it's physical or electronic as it relates to the matter, every record is one piece. So in past webinars, we've discussed our records platform and integrations with the DM systems to provide those unified views. And now what we're providing is this ability for the information governance professionals to think of information the same way. So whether it's physical or electronic, whether it's declared as a record or not, it's going to fall under your IG policies. because everything that exists is still discoverable. And with FileTrail's Enterprise Retention Solution, you now have a way to manage this all together. So this is part of the release that's coming out. It actually is in QA right now, and it's coming out in August. So what you'll see here is within the workspace, you have both your physical records, and then you have links to the repositories that have electronic records that relate to this matter here. So I'm going to open up one of these items. So John talked about how flexible our tools are to define retention policies and apply them to records. And now you can see that these policies are applying to the electronic documents as well. So if I open up this policy here, so here you can see that the client matter, practice area, file type, and other document information are all captured from this repository. And then here you have the retention policy, whether it's the firm policies or outside counsel guidelines that are differentiating that. This is automatically being applied to this electronic record as it gets connected in from, in this case, it's net documents from that outside repository. Okay, so with FileTrail, so now you're able to manage these electronic documents that are in other repositories, just like you're able to manage the physical items today. So just as John was walking through that disposition review dashboard, these electronic items are going to appear under that disposition review, just as the physical ones do as well. And then once items are approved for disposition, this is going to kick off your workflow for destruction, and it's going to be managed on this dashboard. For the physical records, if you have physical records, are typically at offsite storage. If you have that service level with your offsite storage where they do the destruction for you, you can order the destruction right through this dashboard. If anything needs to be pulled on site and destroyed internally, those are going to land here under the destruction requests. And then for electronic items that are approved for destruction, those are going to land in this pending external dispositions area, and that's going to be tracked and managed until that workflow is completed. Whether you choose to have your IT staff go in and take that as a task and go do the actual deletion. Some firms have a preference of creating that extra task. So that's one configuration option. The other option is having the deletion happen automatically and being triggered from FileTrail. So both of those are options here. Once that's completed, you then have all the tools for reporting. So I'm just going to touch on some of the trend reports here and then hand it back to John to discuss how InOutsource is using the tools for implementation. But within these trend reports, you can see that there's an area here for physical records that are getting destroyed year over year. It's then showing a forecast. So here in the New York Record Center, we could see how many physical records are going to get destroyed based on what exists today and based on the current policy. But now, because we're tracking the electronic records as well, we can see the number of documents that have been destroyed year over year. So here, using my NYC file share as an example, it shows how many documents have been destroyed. But now we can also forecast that. So, year over year, here's the number of documents that will be destroyed based on what exists today in current policy. But because we can tie that to the storage savings, or how much storage those documents are taking up, we can see how much storage will be reclaimed within those different repositories. And then it really helps you manage the amount of storage space you have on those different repositories. So that can be tied into the cost savings that you'll have based on following and complying with retention policies. Okay, so this is an area here for the trend reporting. Many of the reports are done through the search, and from here I'll hand it back over to John to discuss that and how InOutsource is using these tools for deploying those.
Great, thanks for that, John. All right. So what I want to go through quickly is the searching and reporting tools that we're sort of really in love with here at InOutsource. One of the other big struggles that we get a lot with folks is just not being able to report back on this data. So they're struggling with things from retention to attorney departures. So we really wanted to be able to find a system and leverage a system that gave us really robust tools. So the search functionality that is already in FileTrail is really great. As I spoke to a little bit earlier, we're able to cross-reference matter level fields and client or item level fields to be able to really leverage the system. So when information is captured at the client level, maybe a client originating attorney or a client or a matter responsible attorney, we're able to leverage that in the system while not sacrificing workarounds that we've seen a lot in some other cases. So the search tool here is so robust and configurable. It comes, ground up. So I've made this quote basic search that gives us keywords, client matter, billing, and responsible attorney, just a couple sort of standard fields. Right here, as I'm in as a records administrator, to configure the search tools is super easy. The designer, as John mentioned and spoke to a little bit before, everything is point and click. So this is the designer that FileTrail has in it for all its searches, and it really allows us to design searches in a way that will feel friendly to our users, put the information that they need at the top, sort of at their fingertips, without having sort of to get information and sort of mesh it together from a couple different places. So we can really get granular in terms of use cases or keep things really broad and simple so that we don't have a ton of options confusing folks. So I did do this basic search, but say we decided that okay, folks really like being able to search against the folder owner, the file owner. So they do like the matter level fields that we've put in here, but we want to also be able to search against the file owner. So I saved that, I added that field, I saved it. By clicking add field, I have access to all the system defined fields, all of the user defined fields that we develop and create in the system for you. And just as easily saved it. And now if I reload my page, I'll see we can search by file owner. So really, it's that easy to configure these. So I've designed this search and say I want to search for, I'm going to just do a keyword because I know that will return some data in here for me. I can search against a number of different fields by using that keyword tool and can search by fields that we're not necessarily reporting against as well. So I've set this report up in this way, but this isn't necessarily telling me all the information. So if we have other fields available to us, we could add fields and maybe alter those in a way. So if I wanted to report against the file title here, I could simply add this as well and put it in the order that I want. We call this description, but I want to call this the file ID in this case. So if I save this and I configure, have this configured the way we need, you can see those fields are added now to the report. So it's really easy to develop these tools. We'll build you a bunch of searches based on the use cases that you described to us throughout configuration, but really that easy to update these and really own these and move forward with these as for the firm. So as I searched for the field of Boschman and it brought up some information for me here. So say I wanted to refine my results and I was adding, I wanted to search by this instead. I can actually refresh this and instead of loading my whole search, can actually click this get item count and get an update and see if information, if there's information available to me there. And in this case, there's obviously not. But what I really like about this tool is, I mentioned before with my retention search that I wanted to, I was filling out predefined values. So this was a really cool idea for me, and I think the easiest example of this is when, a secretary calls records and say, I want to see all of the information for every attorney that I work for. It's not necessarily super easy to do, and even if you do it, you're doing it probably on a repeating basis for somebody. So I actually had this user build her own search. I walked her through how to do it, in this hypothetical help desk situation, and walked them through how to build a search for themselves. But I could also build it for them and deploy it to that person if I wanted to. So if this person wanted to be able to view any file for which she defines, sort of my attorney as anytime one of her attorneys was a billing attorney on the matter. So it ignores whether, we can search by file owner in this case if we want to, but she wants to be able to see all the files, even for the associates that work under her attorney. So we went with using this matter billing field. So this is actually predefined for her, and it's really easy to just run this search. So this search is available to her in the same way that this non-standard retention search is available to me. So with 2 clicks, I ran that search that I know is a repeat offender and I need to run on a regular basis. I can modify this search. So as I ran this search, I ran it again, as I explained, sort of where that non-standard retention was true, but the record series still had been marked as standard. So really great in terms of configuration and improving processes. All those searches, we put, we made this nice IP search here because for the IP group, we built in some user-defined fields for the files that really allows them to capture information in a more searchable and reportable way. So we're capturing LIPO code inventor or application number. And we took care of a lot of those data cleanup things as part of the migration from their legacy system to their new one. So we've been able to capture and apply these values to this information. So if I wanted to search against, what I'm also doing in this search here is actually limiting the search to the practice group for IT. So anytime they click this, they're only going to search in the IP department. But we could also apply this to the document level and say, okay, I only want to search against things we classified as IP docs, so that if they do exist across different practice groups, we could do that as well. So we've got some cool options here. So let's see if this search result returns anything unique for us. It does. Good. That's a good guess for me. So we can see this report is formatted a lot differently than what we've seen in the other search result sets. So being able to have this information quantified in a way that the IP group needs and what in the fields that they care about was really important to us. So I really liked being able to customize the system to that extent. I'm gonna switch over to our beta environment really quickly, and I'm getting a little sensitive to the time. So make sure if you do have any questions for us, you submit them into the question bucket, and I'll try to answer them with the few minutes we have left. One of the nice tools that's coming out with this next release is an ad hoc report designer. Place for so the ability to create more of these PDF style reports that Legal Key and the ARM folks are accustomed to viewing. So by clicking on this new report, you see this is a step-by-step wizard to be able to walk us through the different portions and the design of a search. What I really love too is being able to incorporate a database query if I want to. So I can create these based on my search result sets, which for law firms and what we're seeing right now, 90 to 95% of what they're searching for, we're struggling to search for, or currently going to IP to run SQL queries on. We can do a lot of with the standard results tools that are available in FileTrail. But because we talked to them about the way the processes are going right now and how folks are querying the systems, we wanted FileTrail, and FileTrail thought to add this spot for a SQL query. So this will, of course, require someone either on your implementation team on our side that knows SQL, which we obviously do. But going forward, IT users that maybe needed to write a reusable query can do so here as well. So that can actually be done right through here. They could even just send it, and a records user could add this. We're picking formatting here that we can design for you as well, and it's just taking you through some of the basic steps of designing the report. So you can configure this in a way and display headings and sort of alter the fields that are displayed and really make this unique in your own. What I've seen a lot of folks doing is taking together multiple reports out of LegalKey and creating one big giant report. A lot of manual labor. So this really allows us to design new reports and really make sure that as we're growing and our needs are changing, that we are creating things in a way that's usable for the firm. You can see I had a pretty straightforward example sort of generate in terms of just listing the description and location. But designing things based on more detail about where they're going, we really saw that as a need as well. So we developed this report, which looks a little bit different as well. So some of the examples that can come out of the report designer as well. John, I didn't know if you had, did you mention that you had another example of a report?
I do have one other one, but I'm sensitive to time, so we can we can skip.
Cool. So one of the questions that we get, one of the big questions that we get, of course, here at InOutsource is how long do these implementations take, and what is the sort of approach that folks are taking? So we're seeing these implementations take anywhere from 6 to 9 months. There's a bit of a size factor of the firm, of course. Really does depend, though, on what your goals are as part of this records and information governance sort of project. So if your firm is looking for just really, doesn't have that healthy and modern information governance program just yet, and really needs to build that, but wants to replace the system so they start to have these tools, we can do just a little bit more of upfront of a straightforward replacing LegalKey or replacing ARM. But some firms are really taking that time to dig in and say, you know what, let's really look at our process, let's look at our policies, let's update this in a way that makes a lot of sense, and really design this with a good go forward in mind already, because we're looking forward to that. So those two things are the sort of the big factors that we see in the implementation approaches. And again, they're taking about 6 to 9 months. We are FileTrail's go-to-market partner for legal, as I mentioned before. So we handle all of the implementations for large law firms. We've got 4 dedicated project managers and 3 technical resources. Technical resources are led by Tim Kloss, who is our implementation manager, and David Boschman leads our project management team. He just has a wealth of knowledge of the legacy system, so really providing a lot of value to the implementation teams in terms of translating our sort of firm experience with our project managers. So that's a little bit about our approach as well. And the next question that comes in is folks often push back a little bit on the, in terms of the attorney involvement in disposition review. So I want to address that a little bit. We recognize that that's, retention to a lot of folks is, a foreign concept. Folks just don't have the tools to enact it, so really have not been able to do so over the course of matter life cycles. So they're really just sort of getting around to this now. And what I'd like to say is, folks push back a little bit on actual attorney involvement here, but we're really seeing this as something that, through a little bit of training and guidance and talking about sharing the risk factors in not managing retention and not dealing with this, we're able to offer a really flexible tool that involves very minimal effort on the part of the attorney. As I mentioned, when they're coming into retention, it's taking them through a link right to the retention review monitor. So they don't need to come in and run the reports and know kind of where to go. It does that work for them and puts all that information in front of them in a way that they can easily interact with. As I mentioned, they'll see what's responsible for themselves. So they'll be familiar with these matters, they'll see these items, and they'll be able to enact retention in a way that really mirrors the process that a lot of folks that are doing retention are doing now. So we really wanted a way to leverage the technology to incorporate that practice of running these reports and generating lists for attorneys, but in a way that we can manage it well. So we're really excited about more and more firms using this tool to leverage their information governance programs. So I'm sensitive to everyone's day and getting off to a busy, I'm sure, but it's a busy Monday week. I'll hold on for another minute if there are any questions. Don't hesitate to submit any questions through the question functionality on your sidebar. We got a question regarding labels. FileTrail does sort of asking what the configuration options are for labels. FileTrail has a really robust label designer in the back end that is able to, we're allowed to design as many labels as you want, including different labels for different practice groups. So I mentioned earlier that we designed a different set of fields for the IP group. And I know what I see a number of firms doing, and I've had to do in sort of a few of my placements in firms, is add an additional IP label to, or maybe handwriting out on the front of a label while still printing on this, what effectively becomes a very useful standard label for the IP group. So we can actually design a label specific to that group that has their information, that shows it, displays it in a way that's helpful and meaningful to that group, without necessarily sacrificing the intrinsic value of the structure of the system. So plenty of configuration options for that. It's something that, again, as with search and reporting, it's not something that you need us to do. It's something that you'll be taught how to manage and how to configure, and you'll be able to design the labels yourselves after go live. So your involvement or your need of sort of a partner to support you after you go live is really minimal. We get the question a lot, and I'm getting one now, is if we have a lateral move and we acquire a practice group, who do we come to configure the system to incorporate that group? And the question is, or the answer is, you'll really be able to rely on yourselves here. We're happy as an implementation partner, as trusted consultants, to work with firms and making sure that they're building it in a way that makes sense. But we can really take on a project management role in that, and just saying, okay, here's what I'm seeing you need, and here's what you need to build, and allowing you to build it. We can certainly come in and just build the whole thing for you, but we certainly want to be sensitive to cost and understand that that's not always feasible. So having the system as configurable and flexible as FileTrail is really allows you to take ownership of that and build the system in a way that makes the most sense for you folks. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking the time out to review FileTrail's retention functionality with us today. If you do have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to email me directly, and I'm happy to chat with you folks offline on that. We will post this webinar up later, so we'll be able to share that with some folks that were able to miss this today. Again, my name is John Zaranek, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to stay with us today. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your Monday.
All right, thanks for the time.